Welcome, dear learners. From today onwards, we will learn about laws in relation to the toxicology. Under that, today we will delve into significant acts about toxicology in India. Acts, as you know, are formulated once the bills are passed from the lower and upper houses of the parliament and receive the assent of the President of India. This legislative process was developed during the British periods. At their time, the Act of President was performed by the Governor General of India, who were the administrative head of the British India. So, the following acts are important for the toxicology that had developed over a period of time from the British period up till now. Opium Act 1857, Opium Act 1878, Poison Act 1919, Dangerous Drug Act 1930, Drugs Act 1940, Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940, Drug and Cosmetic Rules 1945, Pharmacy Act 1948, Drug Control Act 1950, Drug and Remedies Act 1954, Medicinal and Toilet Excise Duty Act 1956, and the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, called as NDPS Act 1985. These acts we have to know, or at least must be aware of these acts from the toxicology point of view. So coming to one by one, the Opium Act 1857, instituted by the Britishers to regulate the cultivation of the poppy and the manufacture of opium in the presidency of the Fort William in Bengal. So this was limited to the Bengal region, and this act prohibited the cultivation of the poppy and opium manufacture except under the government control. Means government took the control of the opium production and the selling of the opium. This was actually the initial act related to the control of any toxic substance in India. Prior to that, no uniform system of the control of the poisonous substance had been properly defined or mentioned. The Opium Act 1878 extended to whole of India except Jammu and Kashmir. These acts often were criticized for prioritizing the profit over regulation and facilitated the opium trade, which yielded massive profits to the British imperialists. So the basic idea of these acts, making these acts, was not the regulation of the harmful effect of the opium, but the purpose of Britishers were basically the profit making. The idea behind that was they used India for the production and of the opium. Opium is produced from the poppy plant. We will come to detail about the opium and what are the chemical components of opium and what are the poisonous effect and what are all the clinical features in detail when we will talk about the opium. And so the opium was one of the very popular narcotic substance, and this was demanded. This was even demand was created in the China region by the Britishers with the forced control and regulation. So manufacturing hub was the India and the China was the market. They used to produce the opium from India and transfer it to the China, and the profit that they were earning out of it were being taken by the Britishers. So they transferred the profit to the Britishers. So this was the basic idea behind making those acts. So they applied excise duty and countervailing duty on the opium. The penalty for the illegal cultivation and for not following the rules made under these acts were mentioned. Seizure of illegal storage of the opium was also made part of the act. It has been reported already, as I told, that the basic idea for them was the profit making rather than the regulation of the poisonous impact of the opium. The opium trade yielded enormous profits to the British imperialists during the 19th and the first half of the 20th century. China is said to have been forcibly converted into the largest market for the opium by the Britishers from the early 19th century. India emerged as a fertile ground for the cultivation of poppy and manufacturing of opium under the British monopoly during the colonial period. British rule in India and British control of the Indian princely estates ensured a steady supply of opium from India to China and thereby facilitating the transfer of economic surplus from China to Britain. Further, the first act on the broad control of poison came into the 1919, named the Poison Act 1919. It consolidated and amended the laws relating to the importation, possession and sale of the poisons. It provided provisions for licensing for the sale, wholesale, retail, import or export of the specified poisons. Further, the Dangerous Drug Act 1930 centralized control over the dangerous drugs. Dangerous drugs mainly included the opium, coca leaves, hemp plant, that is the cannabis. It prohibited the cultivation of coca plant and the manufacture and import of opium compounds without proper permissions. The Governor General of the Council had control over these dangerous drugs in production, supply, manufacture of the manufactured drugs, transport, import and export of these dangerous drugs. Further, the important act that came was the Drugs Act 1940. Drugs Act 1940 regulated the import, export, manufacture, distribution and sale of the drugs. For the first time, the drug was properly defined and included the broad aspects of the chemicals, medicines, diagnostic substances, and substances affecting the human body functions. As per the Dangerous Drug Act, drugs were the substances included all the medicines for the internal, external use of human beings or animals and all substances intended for use or in the treatment, mitigation or prevention of disease in human being or animals. Not being medicines and substances exclusively used or prepared for use in accordance with the Ayurvedic, Unani, homeopathic, biochemical system medicine. So, this Ayurvedic, Unani, homeopathic biosystem of medicine were excluded from the definition of the drugs. Also, it included diagnostic, abortive, contraceptive substances, surgical ligatures, suture, bandages, absorbent cotton, bacteriophage, adhesive plasters, gelatin capsule, antiseptic solutions. Such substances, other than the food, intended to affect the structure or any function of the human body or intended to be used for the destruction of the vermins or insect which causes disease in human beings or animals were also included under the definition of drug. Further, the definition of drug included any substance mentioned in the monograph or the edition of the British Pharmacopoeia, British Pharmaceutical Codex, United States Pharmacopoeia, National Formulary of United States or the International Pharmacopoeia, whether alone or in combination of any substance exclusively used in Unani, Ayurvedic, homeopathy or biochemic system of medicine and intended to be used for any purpose mentioned in the clause 1, 2 or 3. So, here if it is used in combination for the Unani, Ayurvedic, homeopathy or biochemic system. Further, any other substance which the government may by notification in official gazette declare it as a drug for the purpose of this act. So, these all substances were included in the definition of drugs. Now, why the exact words are important? Because what is important over here, when we will come in subsequent classes, one of the topic is the designer's drug. Designer's drug is where the addictive drugs that are marketed across the countries, which are banned and which are used for the addiction purposes and earn a lot of value. So, these drugs are exported in between the countries and there are the big criminals who are involved in the transport of those drugs. So, once the law comes that this particular drug is banned from the transport, export or export, then what they does is they make the slight modification in the chemical nature of that substance. So they will add some formula, some CO compound, they will be added, some methylation may be done like that, so that the law will not be mentioning that this particular compound is banned. So it will be now once they will be caught with those substances, although they are having the similar effect of the primary compound, but because of the slightly different structures, they will be escaped from the check by the authorities, check by the excise system and all those systems. So they will be they will evade from the check and they can earn money. So they are under the designer's drug. So disadvantage is that we will not be able to caught those type of drugs. So it is the actually disadvantage of the, you may say, the law, because law runs by the words. So whatever is mentioned in the law, the person who is obeying the law or the executive class who has to follow the law, they will be following it by the words, by the rule what the law is saying. So they cannot overpower themselves, or they cannot take decision on their own. They have to follow the law, what the law has fixed, that this has to be followed. So in that way, we have to know the exact what is defined under the law. So this was the definition of the drugs. First time the drug was defined under this Drug Act 1948 in broad detail. And further modifications had been done. Now the Drug and Cosmetics Act came in the 1962. This same Drug Act 1940 has been modified now as a Drug and Cosmetic Act in 1962 amendment. So under this only, the Drug Act, the Drug Technical Advisory Boards and the Central Drug Laboratories, the Drug Consultative Committee were constituted under the Act. A drug inspector was assigned to regulate the provisions of the Drug Act 1940. So, and further, the import of certain drugs were restricted. So what all those drugs that import were restricted was any drug which is not of standard quality, any drug for the import of which a license is prescribed, otherwise than under and accordance with such license, any patent or proprietary medicine, unless there is a displayed in a prescribed manner on the label or container thereof, either the true formula or list of ingredient contained in it manner readily intelligible to the members of the medical profession, any drug by which means of a statement, design or device accompanying it by any other means purports or claim to cure, mitigate any such disease or ailment, or to have any such other effect as may be prescribed, any drug the import of which is prohibited by the law made under this chapter. So these drugs were banned from import without license, export were prohibited, and the import were also restricted, and the import were restricted up to the level where the license was allowed, or there is no misbranding, no poor quality, or no adultery like those things. Further, the Act was amended in 1962 to be called as the Drug and Cosmetic Act 1940. The definition of cosmetic was mentioned as any article intended to be rubbed, poured, sprinkled, or sprayed on, or introduced into, or otherwise applied to the human body or any part thereof for cleaning, beautifying, promoting attractiveness, or altering the appearance. It includes any article intended for use as a component of cosmetic, but it doesn't include soap. So soap is excluded from the cosmetic. So you cannot challenge soap as a drug, and you cannot challenge a person for any side effect for the soap under the Drug Act, right? Further, the standard of the quality, misbranded, spurious and adulterated drug and cosmetic were properly defined under the Act. That is what is the misbranded drug, what is a spurious drug, what is adulterated drugs, they were properly defined under the Drug and Cosmetic Act selling, manufacturing, importing, exporting of poor quality, misbranded drugs or spurious or adulterated drug were made punishable with imprisonment up to 1 to 5 years with or without a fine. So this is important because before that, whatever the seller had or the supplier did not had any charge for producing any of these misbranded, poor quality or spurious or adulterated drugs, but these were made punishable under this act. Further, section 27 of the act says any drug deemed to be adulterated or spurious when used by any person for or in the diagnosis, treatment, mitigation or prevention of any disease or disorder is likely to cause his death or is expected to cause such an harm on his body as would amount to grievous hurt within the meaning of the section 320 of the IPC. So, if a person dies because of the use of the adulterated, spurious drugs or such type of drugs, then in that case, the charges of grievous hurt will be framed and he will be punished under 320 of the IPC. And also, the case, the person, as the case may be, shall be punishable with an imprisonment for a term which may extend to 10 years and which may not less than 10 years up to the life imprisonment, and shall also be liable to be fined which shall not be less than 10 lakhs of rupees or 3 times the value of these drugs confiscated whichever is more. So, the punishment for using such type of drugs or causing side effect because of the spurious drugs, adulterated drugs or the your misbranded drugs were punishable. First, the 1 to 5 years of the fine, 5 years of punishment, and then if the death or the any harm occurs, then the punishment of grievous hurt. Right, grievous hurt may be given under the 320 of IPC. Further, the punishment up to 10 years to the life imprisonment may be given to the person, as well as the fine of not less than 10 lakh rupees. So, these provisions were made under this Drug and Cosmetic Act. Now, the definition of the what is the misbranded drug. Misbranded drugs are those drugs that if it is colored, what misbranded means what the brand says, that is from the missing from that brand's description. If it is so colored, coated, powdered or polished that damage is concealed, or if it is made to appear better or greater therapeutic value than the really is. So, misbranding, what is not the actually it is not, we are showing to of higher quality. If it is not labeled in a prescribed manner, so a proper labeling guidelines was given. We will come after some time what the some guidelines on the label of the container should be there. Similar type of guidelines were given. If its label or container or anything accompanying the drug bears any statement, design or device which makes any false claim for the drug which is the false or misleading in any particular manner. If they are making any false claim, they are also called as the misbranded drugs. Further, the adulterated drugs. Adulterated drugs are those drugs, as the name suggests, adulteration has been done. If it consists in whole or part any filthy, putrid or decomposed substance, if it has been prepared, packed or stored under insanitary conditions, whereby may have been contaminated with filth or whereby it may have been rendered injurious to the health, if its container is composed in whole or in part of any poisonous or deleterious substance which may render the contents injurious to the health, if it bears or contains for purpose of coloring only a color other than the which is prescribed, color also that can be carcinogenic, if it contains any harmful or toxic substance which may render it injurious to the health, if any substance has been mixed therewith so as to reduce its quality or its strength. So, these are all categorized under the adulteration of the drugs. Getting it? So, if you find such type of drugs, you can complain to the appropriate authority under this act and the accused may be punished. Further, the spurious drugs. Spurious, as the name suggests, is imported, if it is imported under the name which belongs to another drug, means you are bluffing. If it is in an imitation to or substitute for another drug or resemble another drug in a manner likely to deceive or bears upon its label or container the name of another drug, unless it is plainly and conspicuously marked so to reveal its true character and its lack of identity with such other drugs. If the label or the container bears the name of an individual or company purporting to be manufacturer of the drug which the individual or company is fictitious or doesn't exist. If it has been substituted wholly or partly by another drug or substance, if it purports to be product of the manufacturer of whom it is not truly a product. So such type of drug means you are bluffing some drug with some other thing actually. So these all will be included under the spurious categories. Clear? So further the Ayurvedic, Siddha and under this only drug and cosmetic acts, Ayurvedic, Siddha, Unani drug technical boards were formed and the consultative committees were formed so as to regulate those Ayurvedic, Siddha and Unani drugs and cosmetic, because prior to this there was no regulation on this Ayurvedic, Siddha and Unani drugs. In exercise of the powers conferred under the Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940, the central government came up with the Drug and Cosmetic Rules 1945 to regulate the import, manufacture, distribution, sale of the drugs, functioning and procedure of the Central Drug Laboratory and appointment of the licensing authorities. Under the Drug and Cosmetic Rules 1945, it contains basically the whole detail of the what exactly how the drugs would be packed and all those different rules as per the Drug and Cosmetic Act. Important for us to know is the Drug and Cosmetic Rule has 25 schedule at the end of it that contains various performers and the relevant information related to the drug. I will suggest you to go through the Drug and Cosmetic Act, Drug and Cosmetic Rules, and when we will learn Narcotics and Psychotropic Substances Act, NDPS Act, these two acts, Drug and Cosmetic Acts and NDPS Act, are very important for our point of view. Under this 25 schedule, we have important schedule for us are Schedule C. It has description of the biological and the special product. Schedule E omitted in the 1982, but it has Schedule E1, which contains the list of poisonous substances that are mentioned under the Ayurvedic, Siddha and the Unani system of medicine. Schedule F, Part 1 contains the vaccine, Part 2 contains the antisera and Part 3 contains the diagnostic antigens. Schedule G contains the 65 drug, which must be labeled with a caution that it is dangerous to take this preparation except under the medical supervision. So there should be label on the Schedule G drugs that it is dangerous to take this preparation except under the medical supervision. Further, Schedule H is the none over the counter drugs are those drugs that cannot be sold without the prescriptions, right? So these drugs, none over the counter drugs, are which must be labeled with the symbol RX and the warning Schedule H drugs to be sold by retail on the prescription of a registered medical practitioner. So on the Schedule H drugs, see, this warning should be there to be sold by retail of the prescription of the registered medical practitioner only. If the drugs comes under the purview of the NDPS Act, if Schedule H drugs, they are mentioned in the Schedule H1, if it is come under the NDPS Act, then there should be NRX in the red color with the same warning as above. The label of innermost container of the drug in the Schedule G and H should be additionally bear a conspicuous red vertical line on the left side running throughout the body of the label, which should not be less than 1 mm of the width. So you can see how the specific criteria, the specific details about the every drugs had been mentioned under the Drug and Cosmetic Rules. So these such type of details are there in the Drug and Cosmetic Rules. Schedule J is about the list of diseases for the cure and prevention of which no drug shall be advertised. So there is the long list of diseases. If someone advertises for those diseases, then this is a punishable under the act. Further, Schedule L says contains the antihistaminics, antibiotics, and the anti-cancerous drugs. Schedule X has the some sedative hypnotic drugs, and Schedule Y includes the clinical trial categories. So, with different categories under the cosmetic drug and cosmetic rules. This is the picture that is showing that the Schedule H drug. This is the, you can see this is the Schedule RX has to be there. So this is Schedule H drug. So this strip, vertical strip on the left side should be there. One is there. You can see the generic name paracetam tablets. So this has font size 12. This has been mentioned under this rule. So brand name should have font size of 10, Vivacitam, and it should storage, how to store in the cool and dark should be, font should be bold and the black in color. Now see that this Schedule H is written in the red box. Schedule H, which is where it says Schedule H prescription drug, caution not to be sold by the retail without the prescription of a registered medical practitioner. So this should be mentioned on a Schedule H drug, right? So Schedule H drug should contain this prescription. They should mention Schedule H. They should have RX, then this generic name, brand name, and then this red strip. This should be less than 1 mm of red strip should be there on the inner tablet. So this description should be there on the Schedule H drug. Another is for the narcotic substance. If the Schedule H drug that is having narcotic, then there should be similar description with NRX. So alprazolam is of narcotic category. So Schedule H1 prescription, that it is dangerous to take the prescription except in accordance with the medical advice, not to sold by the retail without the prescription of the registered medical practitioner. So this is the Schedule H drug. Similarly for the Schedule G drug, so this is glipizide, that is the sulfonide urea group of drug. So here it is under the Schedule G category of drug. So you can see this caution, as I told in that slide, that there should be caution that it is dangerous to take this preparation except under the medical supervision. So this caution should be there in the red box. One is that. Another is this red strip should be there on the left side of the inner side of a strip. So that should be there. So this composition, RX, lipizide, like that, this thing has to be there, brand name and those. So what should be the structure of a tablet, what should be the details on the tablet or prescription shall be were properly mentioned under these drug and cosmetic rules. So this is important for those who are dealing in the pharmaceutical industries, or those who are even for the general public, for the awareness that they should be precautious, they should be alert while taking those tablets, and they should not take without the proper prescription. And also it gives, if we are aware, so we will be being a doctors also, we will be very careful. We have to know also that what shall be, what type of tablet looks like what, so that you can easily understand by looking the cap of the tablet or the drugs. So with this, thank you so much for today. We will shall meet in the next class. Thank you.